And you're very welcome to another edition of the Solid Foundation Property Podcast. Of course, I'm one of your hosts, Porry Kilferty. We're back once again, and I also have another host as well, as usual. How are you, Lisa O'Reilly? You're keeping well and you're enjoying the sun.
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, we're enjoying the sun. Nearly 3 weeks at this stage, so it's amazing. So it is. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I'm not too bad now. I think, yeah, Donegal's nice in the sun. We'll take that. We're used to 360. When you said there's 3 weeks, is there? I haven't seen 3 weeks, but maybe that.
We're in the sunny southeast, though. We're in the hottest county in Ireland. So I don't know. What can I say?
Yeah. How are you, Lisa? Anyway, you've been working extremely hard over the last number of weeks, I hope. And since we last spoke, anything exciting happening? There's always something exciting happening with you, Lisa.
It's usually exciting. This time is an absolute show, to be honest. We've had a lot of issues going on with the couple of different businesses that we've got, the property businesses. So no, it's all not sun and games and roses at the moment. It's we're having a challenging time, shall I say. How about yourself?
Are you doing your meditation? Are you? Yeah.
Trying to do the meditation, but you can't meditate your way out of some of these bloody problems, I tell you.
need to get the sledgehammer out, just
Yeah,
but that's why it's great timing for as I say, yeah, challenges. There's always challenges. There's challenges in planning. There's challenges in lenders. There's challenges in making something out of nothing when it comes to property, and it's always there's always a challenge.
It's just hitting costs as well, I suppose. There's costs involved in everything. So for one of my challenges is we had to get another consultant in on one of the builds, and like that's just added another like kind of 5 or 6 grand without me expecting that. So it's just kind of having to find the money and come up with it, and actually rationalize, do I actually need it? But at the end of the day, I do need it. It's just that it's just costs and hassles, headaches, and anyway, but sure, look, we'll get over it.
The accountant and you would love that because you love well predictability is probably something that all accountants like, but again, I suppose that unforeseen sometimes challenges us all, and suppose our listeners who listen in and watch and see, is there any nuggets that they can get? Sometimes you have to just take a deep breath and maybe see how you can find that extra cost or work it out another way. How have you done that?
So I use the cash flow. So my strategy is the low high cash flow in property, and so I'm using the cash flow. Sorry, there's a bit of feedback here. Can you hear the feedback?
I can. Yeah. So,
Sorry.
Just turn off one of your microphones. Yeah. That's it. Gotcha now.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, brilliant. So basically, we focus on kind of cash flowing assets. So I'm not like at the moment our property portfolio is kind of more like cash flowing. They don't do massive capital appreciation. So I just use the money from the cash flow from the existing properties. But it's nice to not have to find this money then as well. I'm doing a big refinance at the moment with Bank of Ireland, and that's going to be another probably the guts of maybe 4 to 6 weeks before that comes through. So I have to find it in the interim, but we'll find it. It's not the end of the world. We end up finding it. It's just there's other stuff going on then as well. So the contractor market, we do a lot of corporate lets across Ireland. And at this particular point in time, people have gone home. They're going home for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. The construction crowd, wherever they're coming from, like Bulgaria or Poland or wherever they're coming from. So that's quieting down then as well. So cash flow is taking a bit of a hit at the moment as well. So look, we have to kind of take the good with the bad, but that's the way it is, I suppose. And how about yourself, Porrick? How's it all going with you?
Yeah, it's good crack at the moment now. There's plenty of obstacles again. Down valuations is one part of it. As you hit the nail on the head on a remortgage. Yeah, we had one which was due back a couple of weeks ago, but hasn't arrived yet, and it looks like we have to reapply again. It's good fun. Don't teach you this at the courses. So as I say, all of those challenges that we have, suppose we we don't really want them, but we have to try and get around them, as they say. Now,
Yeah.
and that just, it dissects to our very, very special guest. So if there's anyone who could talk us through challenges, who's been around those corners, who hopefully can bring us some bit of sunshine on this particular nice summer day. A gentleman with over 50 years in property, Lisa, and well, he's from South County Dublin, and well, in the past he has dealt with, I would say, every single challenge we spoke about there. And I'm okay at introducing people, but I think people themselves are better at introducing themselves. Mr. Ed Martin, you're very welcome to Solid Foundation Property Podcast. I hope I introduced you to the level of your expertise. I don't think I did. I did introduce you properly, but not to the level of your expertise, because 50 years in property, I don't think I've ever spoke to anyone who has that level of career in one aspect. First of all,
Morning, guys. Lisa's interested in your one there. I mean, it just comes. There's always something different every day with the property. So, I mean, my perspective is I am, as I say, 50 years in the business. My father was in the business before me, and my grandfather was in the business before him. Very different times when they were growing up in the business. It was mainly tenement buildings that they dealt with, poor commercial properties. Wasn't obviously the fluid market that you have in the last 30 years or whatever, 30. Yeah, and it is really only the last 30 years that we've had a fluid market, and things have changed and accelerated. It was very, very slow. There was kind of fixed term tenancies. If you decided to put the rent up, they could apply to get the rent put back down again, that sort of thing. It was poor quality property. And so, effectively, it's really probably only the last 30 years where, the market has been as fluid and as quick and fast as it goes up and down. It will, there's times to jump on, times to jump out. I mean, my father always said, and I have to agree, it's my term on property, is all property is meant to do is to beat inflation by a couple of points each year, and then your cash flow should effectively only beat what the interest rate in the bank should be. That's effectively my long-term goal in property. But what happens is governments get involved. There's what you call recessions come in, recessions go out. There's opportunities go in, and it fluctuates the market up and down much quicker, which is probably makes it much more interesting actually for younger people coming into the market. But as I say, there's always something different. That's what I like about it. There's no 2 days the same, and yeah, it's a challenging at times. It has been challenging for me over the years. It has been unbelievably brilliant. Now in the latter stages of my career, what we basically do is our ultimate aim of 20% of what we do is we try to buy small blocks of apartments. We strive to be the best in that class on the letting end of things, and they all tend to have to be within a 10-mile radius of me, of where I live. And then what we try to do is we set systems in place that run the business, so I don't ever have to be there. And that's 20% of what we do. 80% of the time we're trading and selling, which effectively will get us cash flow, money in the bank, trading things, keeps things going, whatever. But ultimately, I'm thinking, and my advice to people is always be thinking of the end goal and be thinking in decades, as opposed to what you can do in the short term. From my perspective, those property systems that we now put in place, like there's no point in getting to the end goal with your property and finding you still have to go and work 12, 15 hours a day, with that property portfolio. What where it's come me through to the far side, and where, you know, your listeners or whatever, you know, would benefit from if they have a long-term goal in this system, is, you know, my life consists of, I live in Dublin. I spend 3 months of the year down in South Africa. I spend most of the summers in Kinsale. I train every single morning. I've got this goal in life that I want to be one of these grandparents that's playing in the garden with the kids as opposed to watching from the kitchen. I play a bit of golf and I love rugby. And the systems from our perspective with the small building blocks, you know, they're not brand new, but we effectively put in place the best in our class, in my opinion. Apartments for accommodation for what we call is the asset. The asset at the end of the day, from my perspective, is the people that come and stay with us, is the tenants, as somebody calls them, but I call them more clients. So we look after them really, really well, so that, you know, instead of staying for, you know, a couple of months and always looking at somewhere else to try and improve themselves and move into another place, we're effectively, our average stay at the moment is 3.5 to 4 years.
Okay. That's brilliant. And Ed, you said you mentioned systems a couple of times. So
Yeah.
do you mean so is this the systems that you're building for the 20% of your portfolio where you're doing them up, you're keeping them, and you're putting tenants in place? And if that is the case, what kind of systems are you talking about? How do you build those up?
Okay, so first of all, we'll build it, you know, for argument's sake, we obviously have to find the property or whatever, and you finance it, and generally you'll finance it through short-term finance originally, and then when you get, you know, I always say, I had to laugh at you when you said you're with Bank of Ireland. So when we came out of the long story that I've spoke to Porrick about, when we came out of that, we had to finance it in a short space through a company called Finance Ireland. But then effectively what you're doing is, after 3 or 4 years of what you call it, trading, you then have in your hand, you know, a book of evidence to go into your Banks of Ireland or whatever. Because you know, Bank of Ireland said to me at the time, look, we'll finance that. And I said, you won't, because you'll catch me on page 373 of your conditions. And I said, you know, so I said, I will come back to you when we've 3 years trading, you know, and we'll refinance, and that, which is what we do. And I found Bank of Ireland very, very good. But just coming back to our systems, our system would be that, first of all, once we have the apartment block up and running, like, so I'm not going to tell people how to restore a building or whatever, you know, but we've done it, you know, to a very, very high standard. But in our blocks of apartments, say for argument's sake, when somebody arrives into the apartment, the whole bedroom, the whole apartment is totally set up as if it's serviced accommodation. So beds are made, all your pots, pans, everything is in there. Now, where that came from was a number of years ago, back in around 2016, 2017, I went to the UK for a year's board mentorship on with a guy called Paul Smith over there, on service accommodation, because at the time we were kind of considering, will we do the short-term lets and all that sort of thing. It's not for me, right? It just is too much work. It's a hassle. It's a griefer. But what it taught me was that if you can present this standard of, you know, this standard of quality product to somebody, you'll get a little bit more on the rent. You'll get people to stay longer. The more people stay, the less turnovers you have, the less hassle you have, the less times you have to go and let the place, advertise it, send your team in to turn it over, whatever. Also, another thing that we did with the apartment blocks at the time was, during COVID, we had a lot of people in the apartments that were from abroad. They were stuck in Ireland, families abroad or whatever, things were happening in their countries or whatever. Really, really tough time on it. So what we did was we bit the bullet, and we effectively put in commercial speed Wi-Fi that's wired back to every single unit separately. So everybody has their own IP. There's nobody sharing Wi-Fi and all the rest. And we included that in the rent. It's all included in the price. So when somebody comes to us, they might rock up with what you call it, with their bags. They've come off a plane or whatever. They come into us. They walk in. They're probably knackered and stressed and emotionally drained to a certain extent because they've left home to come to this country or whatever. And they walk into one of our units. The bed is made. We'll have a welcoming pack there for them, and they can just switch on commercial speed Wi-Fi to let their parents know, look, I'm here, I'm happy. I can show you a video of the apartment block or whatever. And we want them to have, to be in a safe place. And that's effectively what we do. And I love meeting, young people and explaining to them simple things like, make sure you read the lease. They come in, they're so excited to get a place. I said, make sure it's a commercial. And I think it all, I think it came from, and I have a huge thing for young people. I just think the young people today are absolutely outstanding. I've no worries about the future. I've worries about the leaders that you have around the world, but I've absolutely no worries about the kids of today. And I remember when, and we haven't touched on it, but I remember when, what you call it, when the shit hit the fan for me. My daughter went off to live in New York, and I think purely, she was 22, I think purely to ease the pressure on me and what I was going through at home. And I remember going to New York, and she was in an apartment block there, and they looked after them so well that myself and Mrs. M, we didn't worry one day of, worried about her, where she was staying or anything like that. And I kind of felt like, if I can produce that for people to come to stay with us, that they're in a safe environment, to me, that's effectively in a long, short way of doing it. And then what we'd also have is we have a system of service like electricians, plumbers, handy guys and all the rest. None of them directly employed by us at all. But the minute you have a problem with something, it gets dealt with that day. But how you work that, because people say, oh geez, I can't get a tradesman to come out and do this, because I'll ask him, he'd say, I've got a week's work around of it. What we always do is we say to them, look, this is what we do. If you come out to us in the morning and you give us an invoice that afternoon, you'll get paid that afternoon. Yeah. And we're obviously going to be paying, probably we're paying a little bit more over the odds. Probably. I don't know, to be quite honest with you. I don't worry about those things, because as long as the system is not broke, as long as people are happy to stay with us, as long as we're not taking any calls, in all my years, touch wood, I've never had a dispute that went to the RTB. I've never had a dispute over deposit. Well, the RTB wasn't there 50 years ago. But that's in a nutshell what I do.
Very good.
The side of it is you're trading and selling, and that's a different thing altogether.
Yeah. With the RTB then, Ed, you mentioned the RTB. So I've just had my own case there lately of an RTB case. And like that, in fairness, it went my way. Well, the initial one went my way. Now that I think they're appealing it now. So I've got to go to a tribunal again. But look, it took the guts of maybe 2 working days to get the evidence to get the evidence available, to sit on the actual court itself. It took about 3 hours at the time. So it took a long time from a landlord's point of view. It was one of my first properties, and it was, if I had known back then when I was first taking on that property of what could come down the line, and I was working full time in the corporate world at the time. If I had known what was going to come down the line, I probably wouldn't have got into property. I don't know about you, Ed, but I feel like with all the government interventions now, with all the RTBs, the threshold, all these different kind of bodies that are there to protect the tenants, I feel like there's very limited protection for the landlord, and that it's possibly not a kind of a game where you'd maybe, I just have a property for my retirement fund, it's kind of gone down the route of maybe where we need professional landlords now, as opposed to, accidental landlords, just because of the way of all the regulations gone. What do you think to that? Have you come across any challenges, or what do you think to that kind of thing?
Well, you've raised a kind of an interesting one, because many moons ago, I was approached by a company in the UK, and what they were doing was they were building an app for managing tenancy agreements, and they just wanted my input purely on what should you put into the thing, right? And I said, my ears pricked up and said, "Geez, hold on a second here. If we could get that app into Ireland, into the RTB, because effectively in the and still up to a couple of years ago, the RTB was set up, and basically what they've done now is it started up as a paper trail company, because like there wasn't apps and all these fancy things that you have nowadays that people can go on, online, and they can download an app, and you could manage your whole tenancy agreement. Like, I don't see why, effectively so we approached them anyway. We approached the government at the time or whatever, and they wouldn't even let us in the door. Now, this app is used in council, subsequently is used in councils over in the UK. But effectively what it would do it would store all your tenancy agreements or whatever. It would store live conversations between you and your tenants. So you, Lisa, you come along and say, look, by the way, the washing machine is gone, and I ignored that for 6 months. But suddenly, everything's there. So there can't be a dispute over deposits not being given back. You're seen as a good tenant, I'm seen as a bad landlord or whatever. It's all recorded effectively. So what I think it does is it weeds out bad landlords and it weeds out bad tenants. And I think the problem with the RTB is that it's a juggernaut that effectively has been progressed by people adding bits onto it. It needs to be, in my opinion, it needs to be a start from scratch situation. And where we saw the opportunity was, I can't remember the numbers, but there might have been, say, 450,000 tenancy agreements, or letting agents, or lets in Ireland. So we were looking at the end of the day to nick, the tenant would pay a tenner a year, and the RTB was going to pay €3 or €4 a year. But when you add up all the numbers, it suddenly becomes a kind of a reasonably substantial figure that you'd get on an annual basis rolling into the account. Where we found the problem with it was that when we approached the government and council end of things there, like, if it would frighten you, the social housing backlog of bad properties, poor tenants, a bad top landlord, the amount of people that are in the arrears system in the social housing is frightening. It's absolutely frightening. The numbers, if you look it up, it would scare the pants off you. So the government weren't interested, because it would expose that whole social housing end of things and how badly that end of things is run. So they weren't interested. Like, we were kind of shot out the door. But in the UK, you find that they kind of they're kind of a year or two, I find, ahead of us here, and that's the interesting part of the UK thing, So I think, right, effectively, I think it's a poor system for everybody. And I think then you get the likes of Threshold and RTB, and you can't get the balance right there. And it really, at the end of the day, instead of harmonizing, you know, I want to provide good tenants to clients, or sorry, good property to clients. I don't call them tenants. And what they've created is a wedge between landlord and tenant.
Mm,
Then you have all the political, some of the political parties jumping on the bandwagon. And you create a situation where, the governments if in very simple terms, the governments in both the north and until I looked you up there, I didn't realize was your base. But I mean, you look up specifically in the north and the south, the housing crisis, and then the immigration situation coming into the country, where you're bringing in people from abroad, and effectively you haven't got a system to put them into.
The system, I suppose,
Yeah, I mean, what's going on up north at the moment?
the system's broken, and that's it goes back to a couple of different things. First thing is connection to water. It's just a non-runner at the minute for new estates. There's other aspects of it as well. It's just not really. It's not coming through from the point of view of planning. Planning is another huge issue. And they're just burying their heads in the sand. Like, I have a HMO application in for the last 20 months, which should take minimum 3, maximum 6. So you're very much against the odds when it comes to it, and so much so. I'll have to just look at this report that was issued from memory. It's costing 13 billion or something like that, because Northern Ireland's not even dealing with it. I don't know what it's costing in Southern Ireland, because they're not dealing, well, they're trying to deal with it, but those two factors really causing massive issues up here. And just in our local area, there's over 6,000 people on the waiting list, looking for housing, and it's a huge problem.
It is, yeah, it is. So I mean, coming back to you, Lisa, I don't know what the answer is with the RTB, because I just think that their hands are tied effectively. It needs a whole overhaul, and it needs to get the right stakeholders around the table, and there actually needs to be, enthusiasm to change the system and to buy into it. Who would have thought we'd be on our phones downloading apps and all sorts of things 10, 15 years ago? If you'd have said that to people, they'd have looked at you in the head. And that's when we put that proposal to them. They said, "Oh, nobody would have an app that people wouldn't be able to put an app but needs most situation."
Yeah. I suppose, look, the way AI has gone there lately as well, it's like, I think they're going to have to look at this kind of thing, because it's after just speeding up massively in the last 2 years, with the whole of AI. So back to kind of like the grassroots then of, property. Everyone thinks that, you need money to invest in property. And you do, obviously, clearly you do. So, how do you go about, Ed, raising money? So you said 80% of your strategy is flipping, and 20% is for the long-term hold. Do you use your own cash flow to raise money? Do you use short-term cash flow? Do you raise private investor money, or do you go to the likes of Finance Island and those kind of short-term lenders for development finance? Or what way do you structure your deals now?
Well, we would structure our deals probably through a mix of private finance and going through the likes of Finance Ireland or whatever, right? But I think effectively, I don't think you're going to get really any benefit from me telling you how I do mine, because effectively I'm 50 years at this.
Yeah.
So in real terms, I could actually go to Bank of Ireland and say, look, I need a short-term loan. But So now, you might have, I don't know how many people listen to your podcast. So now there might be two other people maybe in listening to this, that's, that might be conducive to. So they're going to turn off the radio now at this stage. To me, what I, if I was doing it today, right? The first thing I'd say is that, and I will go through some what you call it, suggestions that I have, that there might be opportunities, and we'll go through how you might raise the finance. I think the key with this is and it's a mantra that I give to young people and to my kids or whatever, right? On the whole thing is like, it's not about opening doors, okay? Like, I can go to my kids and they might say, look, I've got this idea or whatever. And I could say, look, I can give you an introduction to XYZ and all the rest. But it's not about that. Effectively, it's about opening people's minds.
Mm.
Just explain that a little bit more for me, Ed.
Well, say, for argument's sake, if you take a strategy, right? So say, for argument's sake, if we move on to, say, one of the ideas that I have, you asked me before this, where do I think that there's opportunities for young people today, right? And probably, and it's the one I've done most study on or whatever, and both from a psychology end of things and from actually just it's plain in front of your nose situation here, is there's a very simple stat, and effectively it's a population stat and what's happened to that population. So I'm from what you call it, I was born in a period that the people at my age are known as baby boomers now. There's none of us any babies anymore, but effectively people that were born between 1948 and 65, and we are actually only 14, just under 15% of the population, and yet we represent 48% of the wealth that in this world, right? And effectively, the situation with it is that we're dying. It's a fact. So
I'm going to bring you back in the figures there, Ed. So 15% of baby boomers own 40. What did you say?
48%.
48%. So there's a key. So if you're listening, there's a key message in there. Sorry, Ed.
And I'm putting a hand up saying we're dying. We're not. So I mean, effectively, over the next 20 years, the wealth transfer that's coming down the line between inheritance, estate sales, and business liquidations is what I'd call a tsunami is coming down the line, right? And if you are a young person or whatever, how do you get that head around there, right? That's and I'm going to tie in one of my other ones with that, just so that because then we can deal with the whole lot in one fell swoop. So down in Dublin, and I'm going to give you the same thing up in the UK North or whatever. Down in Dublin, the changes in legislation and regulation, which Lisa has alluded to earlier on, is scaring the crap out of older people. And what's happened with them is that, I mean, last Christmas I sat in an AGM of the Irish Property Owners Association, and I would say there was 400 people in the room, and I'd say 90% of them was people over 70 years of age, people that had put their property, put property into their pension fund. They saw the property at the end of the day coming along and giving them cash flow till the day they passed away. And because we're a considerate generation of people as well, passing that on to the next generation. And that's very important for people of my age. It mightn't be of other age groups or whatever, but that is passing on family homes, selling family homes, getting, my age group, they get very sentimental about family homes and others. Personally, I don't give a crap about any property. Any property is just an asset, as far as I'm concerned. But we'll move on that. And basically, the government come in and they say, we're changing all the legislation here, and people are going to be entitled to 6-year leases or whatever. That's down here, right? And that scared the crap out of people down here. Somebody is 72, 73, and somebody then has an entitlement to a 6-year lease. Then the restrictions on if there's a problem getting people out. Then that crosses across, obviously, then into, there's all these schemes for when people are in homes or whatever, and how, they get money towards their staying in a home or whatever. So it's caused a huge mayhem. And I would say out of that room of the 400 people, and 90% of which were of that age group, I would think that 90% of them wanted out straight away, out of this whole system. And if you look at the numbers of people that have, left of our age group that handed in notice to tenants was shocking, absolutely shocking. And the government let people of that age group, nervous people, they just want to get on with it. They just want a nice, smooth run till the end. They've worked their asses off all their lives. They've put this in a pension fund to see them through the far side, and the government scared the shite out of them. And everybody was asking questions: how do I get out? How do I do this and all this? And that was only 400 people in a room. Now they could have represented maybe 1,000, 1,500 quid's worth of, or 1,500 properties on the whole thing. So they're effectively, they're effectively getting out now as well. And then when you think of the pass down of the first part I've alluded to there, the baby boomers. I mean, the amount of property and wealth that's going to come down here over the next 20 years is phenomenal, right? Now, the key to it is, that's all very well. I'm selling a portfolio, whatever. And how do you fund that, right? You're a young person. Suddenly I'm selling £1 million worth of property, for argument's sake, or whatever the number is. And how do you fund that, right? And I find that it's generally going to be millennials that are dealing with that. Now, millennials are absolutely brilliant. I think they're so fast, they're so sharp. They've got great ideas. They can pivot from losing a job, something going wrong, onto the next thing. Whereas that was a badge of horror for us at our age if something went wrong. But the psychology between, and this is the important thing, is the psychology between a millennial and a boomer getting together is the key to it all. And what happens, I find with them, and I'm pretty quick, they're way too fast for me. They know all the answers to a certain extent. And it's, if you can get that, if you could get people that millennials to understand boomers and how boomers, the psychology of a boomer and how we work, everything is like the tortoise and the hare race. We're slow. We make slow decisions.
And suppose, Ed, I'm going to just bring you back on that aspect. So millennials and baby boomers, okay. Not going to say which one I'm in, but but baby boomers, okay. Understanding that is, just thinking out loud here, is that where lease options, is that where opportunities like that come together? Maybe where there's a solution that a baby boomer might be looking for that they don't know about, that someone from maybe what's that millennium kind of stature can actually go and show how that could materialize, and maybe it might be more beneficial both parties.
Well, I think that, and maybe I think, say, vendor finance might come into it. They don't want a lump sum. They mightn't want a lump sum situation here, and this is the very important thing that I think is you can do a bit of psychology on the home. You go to work with each other. The other side of it is the what you call it is how do you get the finance in place in respect of this? And I think things like vendor finance, where you can sit down, sometimes we don't want to let go of what we have. We'd be more than happy, for argument's sake, to go along the journey, take, a certain amount out of it to keep us busy. A lot of us don't want to stop. I certainly don't want to stop working. But if somebody said to me, look, by the way, you're going to get, if you just take your €1,000,000 or something like that, and somebody said, look, by the way, give me 200 a year, keep me involved in some way so that I'm making some push up onto the whole thing. I'm interested I am actually interested in that, And sorry, the other opportunity, which I'm sorry, Porrick, I forgot about who you're listening to, is that there's a change, obviously, in the government, in the leader of the government in the UK. And effectively, Labour have given a commitment that, they're not going to touch income tax on this. So they're going to have to get money in some other way at the moment. And they're actively considering aligning the CGT, that's capital gains tax, with income tax over there. Now, that could effectively mean something in the region of 40 to 45% CGT that could be introduced in the next budget, which would be the end of this year. So I think there is, with all this talk about that would be your UK opportunity, as opposed to the regulation that's running people out of it from down here. And for argument's sake, the baby boomers, which is a kind of a 20-year play.
So what do you mean? Do you mean, Ed, then with the UK? Sorry, Porrick, is my camera on or am I gone?
No, you're on.
I'm on. Okay, that's fine.
No,
sorry. So Ed, with the UK, I've been considering investing in the UK also. I want to get some, just to diversify, get some money out of the EU and bring it into the GBP. So I was looking into investing in property in the UK, and they're actually going through, you can see some of their prices, they're after stabilizing, and some of them have actually gone down in the last maybe year or two. The rental looks pretty standardized. They were talking, I think they have brought out a renters reform bill over there, which does give the tenants more rights over there, but not to the level as over here. And I believe in Scotland as well is pretty strong on the tenants' rights, which helps kind of, drive landlords out, So yeah, I was thinking about investing in the UK. So is that what you're alluding to, is because then on top of this with the CGT, it's actually could be a place where you could get some good deals because they're all going to be selling?
First of all, I think the summer is a great time to be investing, because a lot of with the great respect, people go off for the summer, so there's not as much competition around, in my opinion, on summer. And the other side of it is that if somebody said to me, look, by the way, I'm half thinking of selling my portfolio or my property or whatever, there's a potential CGT increase here from whatever their interest rate. I think what's your CGT at the moment is 26%, something like that.
Over there, I think it is, isn't it? Yeah.
That could go up to 40, 45%. Now, that's telling me, get your contract signed, get the fuck out of this market as fast as you can. If, for argument's sake, I knew come, January of next year, I'm going to be paying, an extra 15, 20% in tax for something that I've created the wealth in. And I mean, it just, so that's effectively there. But I mean, here's another one thing as well that I think. Simon Suchi at the moment, he's one of these property guru lads over there. He's talking heavily into this vendor finance. And to me, anybody that, there's the likes of guys that I went to, Mark Stokes, who's very good on the commercial to residential stuff. Paul Smith was service accommodation. Sushi seems to be on the, what do you call it? on vendor finance and other things on pension funds and all the rest. And in Ireland, you know, you've guys tipping away at this and doing a really good job. Paul Green, who were in their offices here, and I'd like to, on record, thank Ozzy for coming in and helping me do this here today. Paul Green is another super guy in a particular area. Aaron O'Flaherty is another lad that, you know, he's got a lot of get up and go about him. And I, you know, a lot of respect for him because he's a doer, you know, and even someone like Gavin Gallagher, who's done something like 7,000 podcasts or something like that in a row. I think he holds the record as on things like you, depending on where you are in your journey and what area you want to get to. Tap into these guys, pay the money, because you know, I don't do, you know, I mean, I do some mentorship, but not on a commercial basis. You know, I don't need to, or I don't want to. But I really enjoy working with people that have got huge drive and ambition. And all you're doing is, people think, you know, a mentor is nearly going to do the work for you. Well, no, that's not what they do. All they want is a sound bite to sound something off from time to time. And I don't know who said it one time, but they said, you know, behind a desk is a very dangerous place to be to view the world. What happens, a lot of people, I find, that they'll sit behind the desk, and effectively, they, you know, they don't get their ass out there. They don't, you know, what do you call it, walk the walk in that space.
A lot of them would be stuck in the comfort zone, Ed, and especially if you're in the corporate world, I find. So when I first started looking into this whole property lark and, you know, could I make a career out of it? I was in the corporate world full time as an accountant, and it was just, I was working maybe 50, 60 hours a week, and you just don't know that there's another life out there. And I completely agree with you about paying for mentorship and, you know, getting out there. I thought I knew it all when I first started out. I thought I knew everything about finance and, you know, what properties, just, you know, it was easy sort of thing, you know. But then when I went over to the UK to do my mentorship programs, it just opened up my eyes. And it's great to see, as you said, the likes of Aaron O'Flaherty and Paul Green, they're kind of, you know, setting up these kind of training companies in Ireland, because, and Gavin Gallagher, because we just don't have that many as what they've got in the UK to, you know, so there is an opportunity over here to get into that, you know. But yeah, no, completely agree that you need to, you know, continuously try and improve yourself. I go to the UK now pretty like every quarter, I'd say, to keep up my training, to keep up my mentorship. I have to say though, when I go to these training events, I would say there's probably about 80 to 90% of the people that be in those rooms. Now, they can gather big crowds in those rooms in the UK because obviously they're way more established. And I could say about 80 to 90% of the people in those rooms probably won't do too much with that information. You know, people like to be course junkies, and as you said, they nearly want their mentors to do the work for them. They don't actually want to get out on the ground and like knock on doors and talk to people and bring them along on the journey. And I think part of the reason is maybe they're in that corporate world and they're working so many hours as it is. But then secondly, you're never guaranteed. So you could spend so much time with somebody to try and buy a property off of them or to do a deal with them, raise finance with them, and you don't actually know whether you're going to get anywhere with that conversation. So people just feel like it could be a waste of waste of their time, or they might just have like self-limiting beliefs that they can actually do it. So I think that there's probably a lot of there could be a bit of that going on, you know, in the background.
Yeah, very, very much so. And actually, funny enough, one of the best lessons that I ever had in my life was it was probably the first commercial property that I bought. I think at the time I was 25. It was actually just the year before father passed away when I was 25. And I bought a property in Balf Street, and I bought it very, very well, which is beside the Westbury here in Dublin. And I bought it extremely well because there was a French Max Factor was their names. And I remember when I bought the building there, just beside us, the Westbury Hotel was opening. And the head of the whole Westbury Hotel group was a guy called P.V. Doyle. It's the Doyle group there. And I remember, you know, I was, you know, a young buck, kind of ego was in my head probably because I'd done a deal, a commercial deal, and you get a bit ahead of yourself and all the rest. And I remember looking out the window one day, and it was the day of the opening of the hotel next door. And I saw P.V. Doyle out in all his suit and everything, and a lovely big jacket on him. And he was out sweeping sand into the gaps in the paving stones. And that stuck with me for the rest of my life. That effectively, you know, never be too above, you know, sitting beside, as we talked about, the danger sitting behind the desk. Never be too afraid if you can get your hands dirty. I found, you know, when I was before I got into property, I was 15 or 16 years of age. There was a lot of tenement buildings we had, and I remember, you know, just meeting the tenants. They were, you know, there were bed sits, so a different type of person or whatever. But I remember, like, when there'd be a turnover in these places, they used to have these big old gas. The gas company owned them, but they'd be manky dirty with grease and all the rest. And my job would be to clean those things up. It'd take you about 4 hours to clean this, get all the grease off, and get boiling water on the thing or whatever. And then there was a product called Z-Bright, which was a kind of a black kind of polished thing, and you'd polish that off and all the rest. And I remember, you know, to me, you know, when you take the team of people that work for me, or, you know, or with me, as opposed to that, I always felt, you know, the cleaning lady is as important to me as the banking guy. And I mean, I don't mean that just in a no fake point of view. I'm telling you straight up that my cleaning lady is I put more time and effort into her than I do the fella that I'm borrowing the money from, because she's my eyes and my ears on the ground down there. She'll tell me, look, by the way, there's something here, you need to address this, or one of the other tenants said this to me, you know, and it's small things like that would be my advice to people when you're building your team or whatever. When you're building your product, get your education in as well. Don't be sitting behind the desk. You know, AI is another thing. To me, AI is phenomenal because effectively it can scrape all this information for you very, very fast and all the rest. And you've got to be very, very careful of what you ask AI to do, because sometimes it can start giving you information, you know, can start giving you ideas on decision making and all the rest. It can't do that. You know, it can't walk the neighborhood. It can't call into the house next door. It can't do any of that. It can't make a strong decision. Of what I will, and I'll say it on record here, is that I think that this whole race for AI and the amount of money that's getting pumped into it, and the billions and billions and billions and trillions going into it or whatever, it will most definitely cause the next recession. Biggest,
okay.
Be the biggest recession that we've ever hit. So think about when you're dealing with what you already have or whatever. Think about that.
Yeah, it's a big one to finish the podcast on. AI could cause the biggest recession, Ed, and there's been loads there listening of the knowledge and the nuggets that we've picked up over the last 50 minutes or so. Some story, Lisa, from start to finish. Ed's journey and our 50 minutes wouldn't do it any justice, but some nuggets there, as I say, looking at the different aspects that Ed has probably pinpointed for some of our listeners. You know, have that long-term view, look for the vendor finance opportunities where the baby boomers might be. So there's loads there to go at. You need to get busy.
Yeah, it is. It's great, and I tell you, even yourself, Ed, it's great for younger people to find the likes of you, in that you get enjoyment out of younger people. Like, you get enjoyment out of mentoring, kind of, even if it's like indirectly, and you're not, and it's not a formal setting. But I find when I first started out, to get yourself around people who want to see you to do well, and if you are a bit of a go-getter, you are a bit of a person who's going to take action, it's great to have the likes of you around, Ed, who does find interest and enjoyment about, you know, passing your knowledge on to the younger generation as well. So thanks a million for coming on, and we really appreciate you coming on, and it's great to have you.
Absolute pleasure, guys, and thank you guys for the opportunity. And just finally, I'd like to thank Ozzy again, because trying to set up this this on my own would have been an absolute total nightmare. That's why I always surround myself with better people than me, more intelligent people than me. But maybe I can collect all the information from everybody and then make that final decision. You know.
Thanks very much, Ed.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, guys.